Welcome to 1189, an online Bible commentary. My name is Tyler Marston, and today we're taking a look at Deuteronomy chapter 26. This is the final chapter in the middle section of Deuteronomy, where Moses has been repeating laws given throughout the Torah. And here we see the importance of giving to God and giving to our community. In all, we should see our own lives as working out in God's story at large. We should be willing and ready to sacrifice our desires, our time, our resources, our possessions to further His kingdom work. And if you want to join our community of Christ followers simply studying the Word one chapter at a time, then be sure to subscribe, like this video, and leave a comment or a question. I'd really like to see it. Then it shall be, when you enter the land which the Lord your God gives you as an inheritance, and you possess it and live in it, that you shall take some of the first of all of the produce of the ground which you bring in from your land that the Lord your God gives you, and you shall put it in a basket, and go to the place where the Lord your God chooses to establish His name. You shall go to the priest who is in office at that time, and say to him, I declare this day to the Lord my God that I have entered the land which the Lord swore to our fathers to give us. Then the priest shall take the basket from your hand, and set it down before the altar of the Lord your God. Moses is instructing the people how they ought to offer portions of their harvest after they come into the promised land, which they're about to enter very soon. It follows up on instruction from Exodus 22 and 23 and Numbers 18, all about giving God the best of what you have, the first fruits of your harvest. Now, when the people make these offerings, they are to do so through the priest. Remember that at this point in history, the people still need a righteous representative to go to God on their behalf. And indeed, with Jesus as our great high priest, we still need the same thing. Now, the people are to give these offerings at the place where God chooses to establish His name, which we've been talking about since Deuteronomy 12. That was all about rejecting the high places and the altars of the pagan Canaanite gods that were surrounding the promised land. In contrast, the people were to only make sacrifices at the tabernacle, and subsequently the temple. Then eventually after that, the church of Jesus' followers. All of that to say, when making your offerings before God, this is how you were instructed to do so. And you were to make this vow before the Lord. You shall answer and say before the Lord your God, My father was a wandering Aramean, and he went down to Egypt and sojourned there, few in number, but there he became a great, mighty, and populous nation. And the Egyptians treated us harshly and afflicted us, and imposed hard labor on us. Then we cried to the Lord, the God of our fathers. And the Lord heard our voice, and saw our affliction, and our toil, and our oppression. And the Lord brought us out of Egypt with a mighty hand, and an outstretched arm, and with great terror, and with signs and wonders. And He has brought us to this place, and has given us this land, a land flowing with milk and honey. And so notice that the motivation behind giving these offerings and gifts, contrary to popular belief, was not solely to atone for sins that were committed before the time of Jesus' grace. These offerings and gifts were given for the same reason we give our time and money today, out of gratitude for what God has done in the past. Each Israelite is instructed to remember and repeat their story, the story of their ancestors, the story of God liberating the slaves, bringing them out of Egypt, and taking them to the promised land. They are thanking God for hearing the cries of the slaves in Egypt and doing something about it. They're thanking God for bringing them safely through the wilderness, despite all the external and internal forces trying to send them back to Egypt. God made this promise, and He was faithful in carrying it out. And theoretically, every subsequent generation of Israel will be the benefactor of that fulfilled promise. Now behold, I have brought the first of the produce of the ground which you, O Lord, have given me. And you shall set it down before the Lord your God, and worship before the Lord your God. And you and the Levite and the alien who is among you shall rejoice in all the good which the Lord your God has given you and your household. This is why the Israelites were to bring their offerings, to thank God for what He has done, and to worship Him, to be in a relationship with Him. And that's not just the worship and rejoicing of one individual, but all Israel together, from the highest Levite to the lowest immigrant who just moved into town. It's a fulfillment of God's Abrahamic covenant. that all the families of the earth would be blessed. It's also a fulfillment of God's Adamic covenant, where God and humans walk together in a relationship that honors Him and thanks Him for all the goodness He's provided. And again, this is why we continue to give to God today. Believing in Jesus is not a transaction that clears us of our debts and allows us to live however we want. God wants a daily relationship. God wants a mutual relationship, a love relationship. He wants to bless you, and He wants you to worship Him for His blessings, weekly, daily, hourly. When you have finished paying all the tithe of your increase, in the 3rd year, the year of tithing, then you shall give it to the Levite, to the stranger, to the orphan, and to the widow, that they may eat in your towns and be satisfied. You shall say before the Lord your God, I have removed the sacred portion from my house, and also have given it to the Levite, and the alien, the orphan, and the widow, according to all your commandments which you have commanded me. I have not transgressed or forgotten any of your commandments. I have not eaten of it while mourning, nor have I removed any of it while I was unclean, nor offered any of it to the dead. I have listened to the voice of the Lord my God. I have done according to all that you have commanded me. Look down from your holy habitation from heaven, and bless your people Israel, and the ground which you have given us, a land flowing with milk and honey, as you swore to our fathers. We once again get more repetitions of laws from Leviticus 27 and Numbers 18. The people are supposed to offer their tithe to God. That's 10% of their harvest. But every 3 years, they're supposed to donate that portion to local Levites, immigrants, and widows and orphans, people in their own community who were most vulnerable to food scarcity. Now, as in the other years, they still make that solemn oath to God, but this time they're swearing that they have followed God's instructions and donated that tithe as God told them to do, and they haven't hidden any of it for themselves. And then they ask for God's continued blessing in the future on the basis of God's covenant with Israel's forefathers. And so this really is major, right? Offerings that were made to God were not always supposed to end up getting burnt on the altar or hidden away in the temple treasury. They were supposed to be used, especially for the betterment of the community and support of the impoverished. As the inheritor of these promises today, the church needs to similarly be wise with how we budget our outreach, our local and foreign missions. And every Christ follower individually needs to learn to not see the poor as the church's problem, and especially not the government's problem, but to take responsibility and give to their local church and give to those in their community who are in need. This day, the Lord your God commands you to do these statutes and ordinances. You shall therefore be careful to do them with all your heart and with all your soul. You have today declared the Lord to be your God, and that you would walk in His ways, and keep His statutes, His commandments, and His ordinances, and listen to His voice. The Lord has today declared you to be His people, a treasured possession, as He promised you, and that you should keep all His commandments, and that He will set you high above all nations which He has made, for praise, fame, and honor, and that you shall be a consecrated people to the Lord your God, as He has spoken. And so these verses close up the entire middle section of Deuteronomy, where Moses has been repeating Torah commands. We've tracked how it's included all types of instruction. We saw how to worship God, how to live individual lives, how community systems should be established, and how each person should get along with their neighbor. And here is the covenant. If Israel is faithful in keeping and obeying all of these commands, then God is going to be faithful in blessing and providing for them as a nation. That's all there is to it. But it comes down to a choice that every individual, every community, and the entire nation will have to make day after day. And that is dealt with in the conclusion of Deuteronomy, which starts in the next chapter. But here we need to recognize a few things that still apply to us in our lives. First, recognize God's role in your life and thank Him for what He's done. See that you are playing a part in God's story for the redemption of the world. And then realize that that is done through supporting spiritual leaders with your tithe, taking care of the vulnerable, and seeing them as your responsibility, and ultimately through keeping God's commandments. When we do what He tells us to do, He is faithful, and He is not going to abandon us. Thanks for watching 1189. I hope God blesses you. I hope you have a good day, and we'll see you in the next one. See ya.